invite you to close your books for a moment, or three. Who remembers what this day celebrates? What Rosh Hashanah is all about? We talk about it each year. We have spoken of it a number of times already this morning. A new year, for certain. Creation of the world, absolutely. The creation of human beings, to be sure. And so it is that we speak of beginnings on this sacred morning. The beginning of creation, our world, of human beings, and of the potential, the possibilities that exist within each and every one of us to change the world in which we live. There is a concept in Judaism of the everyman, the everywoman, those otherwise anonymous individuals who move among us and within history, who simply for being who they are, going about their daily rounds, step forward, step up, and address a need, and the world changes, and for the better. There are stories throughout the Torah that address these unnamed individuals who alight on a scene, be true to their ideals, and set the narrative on a completely different course. As a result, the story we are reading, the story we are living, takes on a new import. Invariably, our text refers to such a person simply as an ish. In Genesis, in the Joseph story, our patriarch Jacob sends his favorite son, Joseph, to search after his brothers. When Joseph arrives at the place he expects to find them, they are not to be found. There is simply a man, an ish, wandering in the field, who asks the young Joseph, "For whom are you looking?" And Joseph replies to the ish, "I am looking for my brothers." At which point this unnamed actor points Joseph in the right direction, and he indeed finds his siblings. Maimonides suggests that this ish is sent to make sure the story progresses as it needs to. After all, if Joseph had not chanced upon this ish, he would not have found his brothers. They would not have sold him into slavery. He would not have gone down into Egypt. The family would not have followed. We would not have been enslaved nor redeemed from slavery. We would not know the Passover Seder. And indeed, our story, our people's narrative, would have been vastly different. But we never hear of this ish again. His whole purpose was meeting Joseph alone in that field. In another instance, we read of Moses also wandering about when he chances upon a Jew being hurt by an Egyptian. The text tells us that Moses looks this way and that, and seeing no ish, seeing no one about, recognizing that he is alone, Moses steps forward to defend this vulnerable person. He does what needs to be done. Sometimes an ish will approach us, as in the Joseph story, and sometimes, as with Moses, we must be the one who steps forward and is the ish, who moves the drama and the story along. Sometimes the entire outcome of a story, the fate of families and faith communities, the lives of individual people and entire populations depends on the catalytic role of a single ish, someone not so different than you and me. Just last week, the world lost such a change agent when Edith Windsor died. You'll perhaps remember Edie Windsor as the plaintiff whose case cracked wide the wall that had heretofore denied to same-sex couples the same tax benefit privileges conferred to heterosexual couples. And then later, as a result of Edie Windsor's courageous and personal crusade, the Supreme Court legalized marriage for all people in all states. Born in 1929 to immigrant Jewish parents, Edie Windsor shared a 40-year engagement with her life's partner, Thea Spire, before they decided to legally be wed in Canada in 2007. Thea Spire died 2 years later, and Edie Windsor inherited her estate. However, due to the Defense of Marriage Act, the Internal Revenue Service denied her the unlimited spousal exemption from federal estate taxes that was, at the time, available exclusively to heterosexual couples. And thus, Edie Windsor was taxed in excess of $300,000. Having experienced this injustice, Windsor summoned her God-given courage and stood up to an entrenched political system and won a victory for all of us. For this Isha's courage, for her willingness to step forward as she followed her conscience and championed the good, President Obama included Edie's legacy among the countless small acts of courage of millions of people across decades who stood up and did what needed to be done. If you are as inspired by Edie's story as am I, I'm willing to bet that you are also, in the same breath, overwhelmed by just how much more work is still to be done. There are so many injustices to fight. Our society treats some lives as more important than other lives. Healthcare is not yet a right for all of our citizens. Our educational system is in need of repair. Firearms flood our streets, and there is so much sadness and heartache and pain in our midst. There are, here among us today, those who have experienced real heartache in the last year or in years gone by, and there are those who carry within them wounds that have yet to heal and grief that has yet to abide. We in this room represent but a microcosm of the suffering of our world entire. How often do we look around? Do you look around expecting, hoping that someone else will courageously address the problems that you recognize? Who among us hasn't shuddered at the thought of having to be that solitary individual who not only recognizes the problem, but addresses the need as well? Many of you may well remember the story of a few months ago of the Major League umpire who saved a woman from jumping off the Roberto Clemente Bridge. On his way to umpire a game between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the visiting Tampa Bay Rays, John Tumpane saw a woman standing on the wrong side of the railing, leaning out over the Allegheny River. He calmly stepped forward, said the right things, wrapped his arms around her body, and with the help of others, pulled her to safety. Tumpane didn't save the world. He didn't change human history, but he surely had the impact on the life of one individual, and we can do the same. On Rosh Hashanah, our tradition calls out to us to be the one, to be the Ish, to be the Isha, who finds the courage within and steps forward, steps up, and does what needs to be done. But where ought we begin? We might attend a rally, call an elected official, or sign on to a petition. We might cast a ballot, champion a cause, or rally our neighbors. We might pick up the phone and simply call a friend, deliver a meal, or reassure a neighbor. Do not believe that your act of courage, your individual act of compassion, is less than meaningful. In fact, the world depends on such significant expressions of caring. At every Shabbat and holiday service, as we did this morning, we make time for the Misha Berach prayer and acknowledge those within our community, among our friends and our family, who are in need of healing of body, reassurance, and uplift of spirit. When we listen to the names being called out, it is incumbent upon us to consider that each one of those names represents someone whose life is in distress, someone whose family is in pain. When we identify those within our community who are frightened, who are struggling, who are in mourning, we have an opportunity, you and I, to allow their fear and their sorrow to enter our own hearts. And as we take note of these truths, we can decide to be the Ish, to be the Isha, who picks up the phone or stops to visit, who reaches out, who expresses love and concern in a time of need. When we hear of an illness or a death within our community, we are in fact called upon to step up, to pause from our routines, to fulfill the mitzvah of visiting the sick, of comforting the mourner, of calling on our friend, sharing a meal with our neighbor, attending a service with them 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 months later. In coming days, indeed between now and Yom Kippur, you will receive an email from the congregation alerting you to ways in which you can be the Ish or Isha who does in fact step up and steps forward to provide caring support for our friends and neighbors in their time of need. In the words of the ancient rabbinic sages, "B'makom she'ein anashim, hishtadel lihiot ish," in a place and at a time when the world feels overwhelming and seemingly no one is behaving in a way that inspires, we must be the Ish, the Isha, who steps up. Rosh Hashanah has arrived once more to remind us of the enormous potential within each and every one of us to repair, to improve, to make the world a better place. Sometimes these opportunities will be immense and will be newsworthy, and still other times these opportunities will be simple and may otherwise go unremarked upon. But each act is significant, and through them we have the power to change lives. So as we enter this new year, Rabbi Henry and I invite you to attend to the opportunities we have to repair or to deepen our intimate relationships, our connections to our neighbors, the lives of those whose names we may never know, in order to bring healing and wholeness to our world. And so we invite you today and tomorrow, in the first 10 days of the year and into the days beyond, to commit to several small, significant acts of courage and compassion, acts of repair and renewal that will improve the lives of those around us and that will, in fact, bring healing to our fractured and pained world. On this first morning of the new year, the world is waiting for each of us to lahishtadel lihiot ish, to step up, to step forward, and to be the Ish, to be the Isha, upon whom the world depends. Shana Tova.